This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gitu-Ewart. It's Thursday, January 16th. This is Africa 54. The Year of Rage. Africa 54 takes an in-depth look at Africa's 2019 human rights record. Tanzania plans to get tough on cybercrime by threatening to block unregistered mobile phone SIM cards. And from being homeless to becoming a millionaire. We'll have the story of a Kurdish pizza king. As we begin our broadcast tonight, the United Nations World Food Programme is sounding the alarm on the dire food insecurity situation facing 45 million residents across Southern Africa. The vast 16-nation Southern Africa development community is in the grips of a severe drought as climate change wreaks havoc in impoverished countries struggling to cope with extreme natural disasters like Cyclone Idai, which devastated Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Malawi in 2019. Zimbabwe is suffering its worst economic downturn in a decade, marked by skyrocketing inflation and shortages of food, fuel, medicines and power. The World Food Programme's Regional Director for Southern Africa, Lola Castro, says the hunger crisis is on a scale that has never been seen before, and the region cannot afford a repeat of the destruction caused by last year's massive storms. The agency says it is planning to provide lean season assistance to 8 million people grappling with emergency level of hunger in some of the hardest hit countries, including Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, Namibia, Lesotho, Malawi, and Madagascar. Across in Africa in 2019, mass protesters vented their anger and frustration. Demonstrators filled the streets in capital cities like Conakry, Harare, Khartoum, and Kinshasa. While the causes of their grievances varied, the protesters shared one unfortunate characteristic: a harsh response from local and government security forces. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg.
Rage raged across the African continent in 2019, with no signs of cooling down in 2020. In Sudan and Guinea, they were manifestations of frustration with entrenched leadership. In Zimbabwe, they mostly centered around anger over economic conditions. In Cape Town, rural Ethiopia, and the eastern Congolese town of Beni, they were about the rights of communities displaced by conflict. Human Rights Watch launched this year's Africa Rights Report in Johannesburg this week to report on the year in human rights.
We've seen, I think, the average men and women of the African continent taking agency, being agents for their own, for the changes they wanted to see. We saw an increase of peaceful protest in different countries. The second, I think, takeaway is that we've also seen a backsliding from government in terms of political and civic space.
That has taken the form of outright police aggression and repression, as seen in southern Africa.
We expected more from Southern African leaders, including President Ramaphosa of South Africa, based on their commitments and promises to fulfill people's rights across the region. But we saw that there was a constriction of space for human rights defenders. In countries like Zimbabwe, there was a clampdown on protesters, excessive use of force by the police and the other arms of the security forces. There was no accountability whatsoever.
There was a glimmer of hope as Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed won the Nobel Peace Prize for his reform agenda and for his reconciliatory moves with arch-enemy Eritrea. But the group's Africa Advocacy Director echoed concerns that the award was premature.
He's done quite a few great things in Ethiopia. He's released political prisoners. He's actually reforming some repressive laws. He's sort of made peace with Ethiopia, with Eritrea. So things are moving in the right direction, mostly. But there's still a lot to be done in Ethiopia.
Overall, it was, experts say, an extraordinary year.
Who could have thought al-Bashir in Sudan will be overthrown? Who could have thought that will happen in Nigeria, in Africa? We're sort of looking at the Arab Spring. So people are being more aware of their rights to demonstrate, to protest.
But Mavinga says the people can't do this alone. He pointed to the nation with the continent's most progressive constitution, which is taking up the rotating chairmanship of the African Union this year.
South Africa has to step up to the plate. It has to deliver on human rights and draw back on Mandela's legacy, but we will have to continue to push.
That, they say, they will do, because as 2019 made clear, people are behind them. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Sudan reopened its airspace on Wednesday after repelling an armed revolt by former security agents linked to ousted former President Omar al-Bashir. Gunfire erupted Tuesday at two buildings used by the Sudanese General Intelligence Service in Khartoum. The army reported that 2 soldiers were killed and 4 were wounded in several hours of fighting in Khartoum against former members of the once feared security service before government forces halted the uprising. Now, for more perspective on this story, I'm joined today by Kuskande Abdul Shafi, the Freedom House Regional Advisor for Sudan. Kuskande, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you for having me, VOA.
You're welcome. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to what exactly happened on Tuesday. What is your analysis on how things are and what triggered this revolt?
Yeah, so the different stories have been, one went up to that this is a military coup, others say it is just a simple protest. But yes, in my, based on what I have been following up, it is a coordinated strike, but it wasn't a military coup in different aspects of what was happened. So, however, this is not a simple thing that to be seen, but it is something that could be seen as one of the trends of the security sector reform and challenge that stands ahead for the government. So this is mainly a strike by the National Intelligence and Security Service, because they are being dismissed from their department and they are being asked to join the different department in the security, but they refuse because they will now enjoy the same privilege they have been enjoyed before when they were
So what's the trajectory now of the current security forces? Because we have a transition government in place. We understand that some of these security forces, came from different, sectors within the forces of former president. Where are they heading in this transition?
So in this transition, these forces, because originally their foundations were foundations found to protect the regime and stands with the President Bashir. So as soon as the head of the regime is removed from the power, they lost their direct command of the state house. And that's why it makes them useless. They don't know what to do, but they spoil it, but they also are not only the security, military trained, highly trained individual, they are in different departments within the government, in the finance sector, service sector, and in different government institutions, including the largest sector of private economics. They are the ones who are controlling.
What does this uprising now mean for the efforts that have been ongoing through this new transition government to bring justice and accountability for Sudan?
So this is going on, seeing this as one of the challenge, and also seeing the situation in the ground as very fast, dynamic, and changing at any moment. And particularly, the main factors to seeing in how to influence the trajectory of the transitional period is looking at these forces. The private forces, ideologize it, more control it, well-train it, and somehow organize it under the previous leaders of the previous regime.
So very briefly, what do you see as the benchmarks that may affect the current state of affairs where this new government is trying to put things back to normal and bring democracy to the country?
So the benchmark is that the biggest benchmark is one is that this agreement has phases. So phase one is gone, is what is now phase 2. Civilians has to take the power. Means the civilian sector of the government will take the lead, and the military will step a bit down and become the same compromise, the same process. So the benchmark is, if the civilian government is in place and they have a parliament, might they do the laws and try to seriously touch the issues of justice and accountability for the grievances. So I think that is a difficult moment.
Konde, thank you very much for your analysis on this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Abdul Shafi Konde is the Freedom House Regional Advisor for Sudan. A new law in Senegal that criminalizes rape has come too late for one young woman who was raped last year and is now trying to put her life back together with a baby. The legislation brings hope to women who campaigned to force the West African nation to accept that rape must stop. The young woman fled a violent husband and went to live with her sister, but a family friend gained her trust and raped her. Widely publicized cases of rape in Senegal paved the way for the change in the law. Women who had kept silent began to campaign to give a voice to rape victims, drawing confidence from the Me Too movement in the United States. After a unanimous vote in Parliament to criminalize rape, President Macky Sall signed the decree into law on January 10th. Previously, rape drew a maximum prison sentence of 10 years, but campaigners say convictions were rare. The new law sets a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of life. A British prosecutor launched a fresh attempt on Thursday to confiscate tens of millions of pounds of stolen from an oil-producing state in Nigeria by its former governor, who was convicted of laundering his money in Britain. James Ibori, who was governor of Delta State from 1999 to 2007, pleaded guilty in London Southwark Crown Court in 2012 to 10 counts of fraud and money laundering. He received a 13-year jail sentence for his crimes. The Tanzanian government is planning to block all mobile phone SIM cards that are not registered biometrically by Monday, January 20th. Officials say the move is aimed at cracking down on cybercrime, but mobile phone users complain the deadline is too tight, and some of Tanzania's political opposition worry that blocking mobile communications could disrupt the general election scheduled for October. Charles Kombe reports from Dar es Salaam.
Tanzanians are lining up to register their mobile phone SIM cards before a January 20 deadline, when authorities say all unregistered cars will be blocked. The registrations are needed, say authorities, to crack down on fast rising cybercrime, which jumped by 82% in Tanzania in 2017. Gifty Swai was a victim of cybercrime. She was defrauded of $1,300 when she tried to purchase electronics online via her mobile phone.
After sending the money, his number was never reachable. I think biometric SIM card registration will help a lot. If the system was there when I'd lost the money, I think it would have been easier to catch him.
The biometric registration will link SIM cards to identification cards or foreign passports and fingerprints. Tanzania's Communication Regulatory Authority says the registration will reduce cybercrime such as mobile payment fraud.
Nowadays, phones are like banks. Sometimes you might mistakenly send money to various places. Because the details of the one who received the money will be known, it will be easier for your money to be returned.
The strict cut-off deadline was imposed to force millions of Tanzanian mobile phone users who were slow or had missed the earlier deadlines to register. Tanzania's communication authorities say, as of January 5, just over half of the country's 44 million SIM cards had been registered. Some Tanzanians worry their phones may be effectively switched off before they can register.
The time is not enough. Many Tanzanians still don't have national identification cards.
Tanzania's opposition lawmakers say cutting off unregistered mobile phones will be another hurdle to campaigning ahead of October elections.
If a member of parliament in the area wants to communicate with the public, asking for a vote or to share information on development, that means if 15,000 phones will be turned off, 15,000 people will be out of the system, so you'll fail to communicate with them.
To avoid any such problems, Tanzanian authorities are urging everyone with a SIM card to register by the deadline. Charles Kombe for VOA News, Dar es Salaam.
And stay with us. We'll be back.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. The Segway 9bot group has unveiled a self-balancing concept creation it believes could form the future of smart city mobility. The company says they want to see the S-Pod appearing in airports, theme parks, and shopping malls first, but say eventually it will be all the rage on the road in the smart cities of the future. Weighing 330 kilograms and traveling up to 38 kilometers per hour, the S-Pod was inspired by the gyrosphere vehicle in the 2015 science fiction thriller Jurassic World. Segway is planning to send the all-electric pod to the commercial market later this year and to the consumer market next year. Next up, vegetarianism is unusual in Japan, with restaurants and food stores providing few options for those who don't eat meat. But as the country prepares to welcome tens of millions of foreign tourists for this year's Olympics, it faces the challenge of catering to those with dietary restrictions. Much of Japanese cuisine contains meat or fish products, even if it is not immediately obvious. The broths that form the basis for many dishes, from miso soups to sauces, is often made with fish. And in other vegetable news, art is now taking the form of a group salad course at New York's Whitney Museum. The exhibit begins with a display of a cornucopia of fruits and vegetables placed atop marble pedestals in the Whitney's 8th floor gallery. Members of the museum staff then come through and pick up the items before taking them to a kitchen, where they create the large salad. The preparation is not open to attendees, but they can view the process on a projection screen set up in the exhibit. The final product is then wheeled out and served to the public in Dixie cups. And that's what's trending today.
Here in America, the Senate impeachment trial of U.S. President Donald Trump begins Thursday with preliminary proceedings, including House lawmakers who will act as prosecutors, presenting the articles of impeachment to senators that will serve as the jury. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts will be sworn in to oversee the process and swear in the 100 members of the Senate. Here's VOA's congressional correspondent, Catherine Gibson.
In a rare ceremony,
impeachment trial of Donald John Trump.
The impeachment process of a U.S. president moves from the House of Representatives to the Senate. 4 weeks after the Democratic majority House impeached Trump,
Article 2 is adopted. The House of Representatives impeached the President of the United States. An impeachment that will last forever.
Pelosi named 7 members of Congress the impeachment managers. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff and House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler among those who will prosecute the trial of Trump in the Senate.
New documents and additional witnesses have emerged that unmistakably point to the president's guilt, and we have exposed the efforts of some in the Senate majority to put on a sham trial. The American people understand that a trial without evidence, without witnesses, is no trial at all, but a cover-up, and that will not stand.
Democrats will try to prove Trump abused the power of the presidency when he encouraged foreign interference in the 2020 election during a July 25th phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Pelosi had delayed sending over the articles in an unsuccessful attempt to force Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to agree to Democrats' demands for witnesses.
This is not about the nuances of foreign assistance to Eastern Europe. This has been naked partisanship all along.
McConnell has said each side will have to present their case before the issue of witnesses can be considered, a view supported by other Republican senators.
After we actually know what we're talking about in terms of the evidence and the prosecution's case and the defense case, we can step back and say, do we need to hear additional evidence and do we need to hear other witnesses?
The White House told reporters the defense of President Trump would be so easy, the trial will only last 2 weeks.
They have a hoax going on over there. Let's take care of it.
But the last impeachment trial of President Bill Clinton in 1999 lasted more than a month. The process in the Republican majority Senate set to begin Thursday, with Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court John Roberts swearing in senators, where they will consider the evidence and decide if Trump should be removed from office. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
Him and Jones returned to Liberia from the United States to start his vodka business, a cassava and sugarcane spirit that he says will not give you a headache. Francesca Lina has the story.
Simeon Jones claims his vodka won't give you a hangover. And he's hoping to avoid any headaches after launching the spirit he calls All Liberian last month. Jones returned to Liberia to start his Hams vodka business after work as a biochemist in the US.
So everything, the whole process is organic.
It was there, through experiments in the basement of his Pennsylvania home, that Jones and his wife came up with a drink made from 2 ingredients found in the Liberian countryside. The first is sugarcane.
These guys are grinding a cane, and once they grind a cane, they get the juice here, and we normally use the juice.
The second is cassava.
The best approach is in Liberia, we have cassava. It's naturally grown, surplus in Liberia. So the best way to make your vodka is to make it from the cassava.
The ingredients are taken to his distillery in the capital, Monrovia, where they create 3 types of vodka: standard, honey, and bitter. One of the reasons for the lack of hangover, Jones says, is that at this stage they remove congeners, chemical byproducts of the fermentation process.
I really love what I do. When you love science and you have the ability to practice it on your own time and create a company, and then you create a finished product that people like and embrace the creativity, you know, it's joy. It's nothing. The feeling is epic.
Liberia's shelves already stock 50 milliliter bottles of the spirit. But Ham says it wants everyone to have a taste before they start selling the 100 milliliter and 750 milliliter bottles next month.
So I tasted it kind of very good and stuff. So I appreciate it.
Jones says he's going to focus on Liberia for now, but plans to hit West African markets in the future.
That was Francesca Lina of Reuters reporting. Haki Akidenise arrived in New York from the Middle East many years ago. Once homeless, he is now a millionaire and has returned to the streets to help those less fortunate than him. Anna Nilsson has the story narrated here by Anna Rice.
Millionaire Haki Akidenise is always busy. He lives in a small New York apartment, though he can easily afford a penthouse and a Bentley.
Dream is not about money. Dream about what you want to live. What you want to live for. Like I always say, it's not about how much we have. I'm a very simple person, believe it or not. And my watch maybe $100. Can I buy maybe Rolex? Yeah, absolutely I could buy Rolex, but why should I?
Akidenise, who's 39, was born into a Kurdish family, one of 17 children. Seeking opportunity, he moved to Canada as a teenager, and in 2001 headed to New York in search of a better life. An American friend said he would help him, but when Agdenis arrived in the Big Apple, his friend didn't pick up the phone.
I should not forget it that day, because that was the most important day in my life when I came here.
A cheap motel, a bench at a train station. Next stop was a homeless shelter called the Bowery Mission, where Agdenis spent 3 long months.
And there were about 30, maybe, 25 to 30 people that were sleeping in my area. People they think is a very easy, absolutely is not easy to live in shelter. People that think, to go in a shelter or live in the street is a freedom, is not freedom.
He managed to find a dishwashing job in a pizza place. On top of doing dishes, he learned to cut pizza properly, then to cook it. He worked for 19 hours a day and tried to save every penny. Years later, he saved enough to buy his own pizzeria, but promoting the business in a city with hundreds such eateries was not easy. Then he won a pizza-making contest, and a magazine printed an article with his pictures. People started talking and then coming to his pizzeria.
I said, dude, I'm famous, what's going on now? Why? And my guys, they see now, wow, people coming. So now the magazine, they bring and they take a picture with us. That time I was not selfie yet. I have a line on the outside. And then it just, God blessed me. And I opened a second one.
His nickname Champion became the name of his chain, which now has 14 restaurants. Agdenis became famous. He spoke at the UN. His Instagram has 4 million followers, and the video where he feeds the homeless has 400 million views. He never forgot what it's like to be homeless in New York City, and every Wednesday he goes back to help.
We have a beautiful smile. We should never let our smile go away. And I told the homeless guy, smile. Just give me a smile. It's okay. Smile. Smile. Just smile. Smile. Give me a hug.
Money comes and goes, says Agdenis, and its only value can be measured by what is left after it is spent. He already knows what to do with his fortune. He plans to build a 6-story shelter for the homeless, where they can live and study. Because sometimes all a person needs is for someone to believe in them. For Anna Nelson in New York, Anna Rice, VOA News.
Fantastic story. What a story. I mean, a lot of millionaires don't go back to the streets to remember where it all started, but that's our show, and thank you so much for watching Africa 54. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.